Folks, welcome back to another episode of Coffee, Tea, and Crime. Today we're going to look at bridge at Brule Creek. Folks, we're going to be in Union County, South Dakota. Most of the information for this episode is going to come from the South Dakota Appellate Courts. It's May 29th, 1971. The two friends, Pamela Jackson and Cheryl Miller, they were both 17 years old. Now, Pam was a junior at Vermillion High School, and she worked at the Dakota Hospital there in Vermillion, South Dakota. Now, Cheryl Miller should have been a junior at Vermillion, but she had quit school. Now, she was also working at the Dakota Hospital. So that night, and this is where the resource material kind of varies, Pam told her parents that her and Cheryl were going to go to a party at the Mullet Farm. Now, some of the other resource material that I glanced at, it said that advised their parents they were going to the skating ring. In any event, the girls are going to head off to the party. Now, they stopped by the hospital to visit Cheryl's grandmama. She was kind of feeling low sick, and their appearance there at the hospital was verified by staff members. Now, they were at the hospital until about 9:30 that night. Now, the girls, they were in Cheryl's grandfather's 1960 tan Studebaker Lark. Now, three seniors there from the high school, they were in the parking lot at the Gary Owen Church. Now, the girls stopped by and they asking for directions. So the girls, they sat there on the parking lot in the car and they waited. And when the fellas took off in their car, they just followed them. Now, unfortunately, the three young men in the car, they were gabbing so much they missed the turn. Now, they were supposed to take a right off the main road they was on to get to this farm. They also referred to it as the gravel pit at this farm. So they had to go down the road and they had to turn around and come back. So now, once they got turned around, they were coming back southbound. And they were going to make that turn, but now they never saw the girls' vehicle again. They don't know where it went. Now, there was a couple of more high school seniors. They were in a car. Now, they were behind the girls. Now, they said that Cheryl and Pamela, when they got to the intersection to make the turn, instead of taking a right, they took a left, which would be away from the party. Now, at the time, this couple, they kind of laughed it off. They said, well, they done went the wrong way. They'll figure out that they're going the wrong way and they'll turn around and come back. So that young couple, they were at the party, and the three guys in the car were at the party, and they never saw Cheryl or Pamela. In fact, no one ever saw them again. Now, the parents, they reported to the police that each of them's daughter was missing. That was the next day. Now, according to some of the resource material, there's those in the community that said the police weren't taking this incident seriously enough. Police were thinking the girls had just run off. Now, according to the information regarding that Studebaker, that was not a very reliable car, or rather I should say, this particular one had seen better days. Now, I did read some information that the sheriff at the time, he was nosing around because they had scoured the area looking for them girls in that car and they couldn't find any of them. Now, a few months after the girls had been missing, Miss Jackson, she had sent a letter to the Attorney General of South Dakota and she wanted them to come down and help. So they sent an investigator. Investigator put out a nationwide teletype of information on both girls and the car, but nothing turned up. Now, it just so happens there was a fella that lived with his parents. He was about the age of the girls, and his parents had several sections of farmland out that way. Well, it would seem that he was a pretty rough fella, and he mistreated women very violently sometimes. So that's kind of who the police were kind of looking at. Now, this case went cold 2004. They got a cold case team together, the state did, and this is one of the cases that they picked up on. Now, by this time, this fella that they'd always looked at figured he had to have something to do with it. He was in prison. He was in prison for 225 years, and that was for a rape and kidnapping, and also the fact he was a repeat offender in these particular categories. That's what got him all that time in prison. So now the cold case unit, they just know this got to be the fella. Because now his parents always took up for him, and they got all that land out there, and it ain't too far away from where them girls disappeared. So now in this search warrant, they obviously have to specify the areas they want to search. And there were several tracts of land, all belonging to this family. 3 fairly big tracts of land. Now, there were 6 or 7 victims of this fella, this suspect. One of those victims had told the police that she thought she had seen a Studebaker, light-colored Studebaker, out there on the farm. But she only saw it that one time, and it would have been in the time frame after the girls had disappeared. The first search warrant they did, because there was more than one, they found bones, clothing, purse, photographs, newspaper articles, and some other items. They didn't find the car. Authorities never mentioned anything about the bones, if they belonged to the girls or if they were even human. Now, the police, they had a prison snitch say that this fella had confessed to him about kidnapping and murdering the girls. Now, with that account and this other information from one of the victims of this fella, they went so far as they got the grand jury to indict this suspect on 2 counts of murder and kidnapping, the whole 9 yards on him. They were going to take him to trial on this. They were going to put him on trial in March of 2008. But then they had to drop all the charges because they found out their prison snitch was lying, so that went to pieces. But everybody's still thinking, well, them girls just can't drop off the face of the earth. They got to be, that car and them bones got to be buried somewhere. And of course, authorities couldn't figure out what one of the victims of this suspect couldn't figure out what she saw out there. What kind of car, how she got confused. Then they got some more information, said that this suspect had used the family's front end loader. He was out there at night and he was dumping dirt on one of the burn pits out there at the farm. Now, what in the world you trying to bury that it's so bad you got to do it at night? So the police went out there a few more times and they couldn't find nothing. So now about 40 years later, 2013, there's a creek that runs through that area, Brule Creek. Now the water line for that creek had always been real high because they'd had so many years of flooding out that way. Well, 2013 they had a drought. Now there's a fella out there that's going to go fishing, and he's over by that bridge. Now I wish I could tell you the road this bridge is on, but I swear all the resource material I went through and I couldn't find one piece of material that told me the name of that road. Well, this fella's over by that bridge. He's going to go fishing. The water's down, and he sees a wheel and part of the undercarriage of a car. It's upside down in that creek. So now authorities get out there, and they get them a heavy equipment out there, and they hook chains on that car and they pull it out. Now the bones of the two girls are found in the front seat. The gear shift is still in third. It was a 3-speed car, and the lights were still on. The switch to activate the lights was still in the on position, and the keys were in the ignition in the on position. And they found Miss Miller's purse, and it had her driver's license and other things, personal items. So what they came up with was that girls had went down that road. Don't know if it was a flat tire or she lost control or what, but they went off into that creek right by that bridge. And when they went down that hill, it turned over, and the water was so high and nobody saw the car. Now, Pam Jackson's daddy, Oscar, he had passed away at 102 years old. Now, he passed away 5 days before the girls and the car were found. Sad enough in this story to go all these years and not know what happened to him, but for the daddy to pass away and not know about it. They said he'd went out for the last 42 years or so, searching every day. Now, there's some people, in particular a reporter, talking about how the police should have found the girls' bodies in the car. Now, I read a little bit of what he was saying. It sounded like to me he thought he was Captain Hindsight. It's always easy to second guess once the information's out. Now, if this reporter had been so smart like he claimed he was, he had worked harder than the police had on the case. Well, now, why didn't he find the girls' bodies in the car? In fact, why didn't nobody ever thought to check that creek? Not once.